So today I have another fantastic author talk with Jack Adkins. Jack Adkins, who's over in America. Another America. I can't seem to find all my Australian writer friends, but I'm more than happy to talk to American writers and just learn about their process and their books. Jack Adkins, welcome aboard. How you doing?
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Much appreciated. It's good to talk.
So you've got three books out.
hmm
Um, but have you got a couple others before that? You've got your series, The Dragons of Dorwyn, which is a trilogy. But you've got some other works I noticed on your website too, haven't you?
I've got a number of short stories. I've been writing for a long time. I didn't really start publishing until uh, I guess after COVID hit and everything was kind of down, and I thought this is the time. So um, I have four short stories and three novels. And I have some other stuff too. I have a thriller story that I'm writing on Royal Road just to kind of test it out because it probably it's a different market than my typical readers, so I wanted to try and stretch my legs and try that out. So.
Yeah, nice. But your main series is the trilogy. Well, I don't know if it's a trilogy, but you've got three books out at the
hmm
moment. The Dragons of Dorwyn, and it's the Blood of the Dragon, the Eye of the Dragon, and the Soul of the Dragon. And
Yes.
your covers are brilliant. I absolutely love your
Thank
cover. I
you.
was looking at them with my son. And yeah, he was very impressed, my 9-year-old. So,
hmm Good.
um, so it's I understand epic fantasy with a sort of fast-paced swords and sorcery and a bit of a South American mix, like an influence on your writing. You want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. So uh the best review that I got early on said that the first book had humor, pathos, and heart, and I thought that was really good because that's kind of what I was going for. And the South American thing, I really love uh, Spanish culture, particularly South and Central American culture. Had the opportunity to go. My wife and I have been a few times to. We've been to Costa Rica and we've been to Peru. Um, Accidentally went to Guatemala or to Honduras. We were walking and I crossed some invisible line into another country. That's always scary, you know. You see tanks and guys with machine guns down in the valley and think, oh, I think we went the wrong way. Um, but I love the culture and studied some of the language and so I try to add some aspects of those different things into my writing. Um, 'Cause it's beautiful and it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah, nice. Well, give us a bit of a rundown on book one in your words, without if you don't want to do too many spoilers, because I'm always a bit like to not give up too many spoilers. But yeah, yeah.
so the gist of the series, it's a planned 7 book series with 3 books about one subject, 3 books about another subject, and then a what I would call a hinge book in the middle that is completely different than the first 2 sets of books, but it ties everything together. The first set of books, this first trilogy as it is, follows the story of a half goblin. He is half goblin and half something else. He doesn't really know what that is. But he has red skin and he's sort of a swashbuckling pirate con man type. And his main mission is to find his father. He lost his father in some way, and his mother had died when he was young, so his father's all he has. So he sets out on an adventure to find his father, and along the way he makes some friends and reluctantly ends up trying to do some good and save the world and all those kind of things. It's kind of a happenstance where just along the way, fine, I'll do this thing and it turns out great and everybody is happy. He doesn't really care about that. He is kind of a self-centered guy that I've tried to play on the edge of really selfish, but he's also very likable because he has a good sense of humor and always seems to come through just when you give up on him. So,
that reluctant sort of hero that, yeah, I love
Yeah,
them kinds of characters. You know,
yeah,
a little bit of color that, yeah, they don't want to be there doing it, but it just happens that way. Yeah, they're always the best reads, I think.
yeah. I enjoy writing that as well. So.
Do you have fun with it? You said he's a little bit funny in that. Do you like to mix your humor in your writing?
I do. It works really well with this character. The series, I intended to start the series differently and follow sort of a trio of characters, but Anuka, who is the main character, he sort of rose to the top. So what I really ended up doing is playing sort of the humor bit, following his storyline through the books, and then deal with some of the world building and some of the things that are going on in the rest of the world. I kind of play that through the other characters. And it's kind of strange too because it's a creature feature really. None of the main characters are human. There are humans in the that are sub characters, but the main characters are all different races, and it kind of fits in Dungeons and Dragons sort of ethos. That was inspiration for a lot of what I've done. So I like exploring different cultures, and in D&D where they have distinct races, it makes it easier to do that. Um,
Yeah,
Goblins
I
are very
love.
different than humans.
Yeah, and then I think you can always have fun when you go hit creature heavy. You know, you can
Yeah.
always change it right up, and yeah. So where does book two take us then?
So, at the center of my series is called The Dragons of Dorwine. So, obviously, dragons are a big part of it. Um, uh, Dragons function as gods. They have incredible power, obviously, and they were placed by another greater god. They were placed in this area, in this continent, this vast area of Dorwine, and their mission was to uh, care for and enrich the lives of these mortals. And they kind of took it to an extreme, and they had become overlords. Kind of this idea of, they're so stupid they can't manage themselves. We'll just become dictators, and they sort of have. And their blood is the only source of magic in all the land. So if you use magic of any kind, you have to rely on dragon's blood, and they let their blood out as it's used as currency. So you could buy a house if you had dragon's blood, if you had enough dragon's blood. Um, they have apothecaries that make potions, like healing potions and things like that, and it all uses dragon's blood. So that's really the undercurrent. So what happens in book two is we start to see this dichotomy between the mortal races who want to govern themselves and get out from under the dragon rule, and the dragons who, what happens when a tyrant sees people trying to wriggle out of their grasp, they grip tighter. So we start to see that, and we see Anuka's focus shift to understanding that he needs some way to combat these dragons in some way to arm himself or protect himself. So that's what the second book is.
And then off to number three. So number three sort of like round itself out before shifting into that hinge book, like you mentioned.
Yes, it ties up some of the stories of the main characters, some of the main things that we started in book one, and it is really about how far are you willing to go for somebody that you love? And who will you hurt? What will you give up? And that's sort of the idea behind this book. And that's what Anuka is really exploring is, he has this goal that is all encompassing, but how far is too far? How much is too much?
Yeah, yeah. And it's so book three is only just out. Yeah. So how is that going? Are you finding your market for your books, and you know where do people find them?
I am. I'm starting to. I've got a healthy newsletter, and I have some social media presence. I work in IT. I've worked in IT for 30 years, so sometimes the hardest thing to do at the end of the day is to go get on the internet and do social things. Uh, so finding time to do that's difficult, but I'm exclusive in Amazon, both on Audible and through KDP, and I've done that for the digital stuff because it just makes it easier. It seems like that these stories play well in Kindle. They're not incredibly long for fantasy. They're 105, 110,000 words. So that's been um, so far been the best market. And I was actually pondering going wide at the beginning of the year because I really want to have my books in libraries. Um, but then I saw this past week that KDP is making an exception and letting you go through like Drafted Digital and enroll in libraries now. That's fantastic. So I hustled
Yeah.
out and got that started. So
Oh, that's amazing. That's
yeah.
amazing. And then so your audiobook versions of these are narrated by Michael Kramer. How did that come about?
Yes.
Like he's such an incredible narrator. I've listened to a
Yeah.
bunch of his books he's read. Yeah, how did you get that one?
Sometimes in life you just have like a spontaneous burst of courage, and I just emailed Kate one time and just said, "Hey, I'm a indie fantasy author. Love all your stuff. Love read all the Wheel Time. Listened to all of Brandon Sanderson stuff. Would you be interested?" And she says, "Maybe. Send me your manuscript." And I thought, okay. Because first novel, I understand very realistically that uh, first novel is not going to be very good. The second novel will get a little better, and you'll continue on as you hone your craft and all that. I think it's Brandon Sanderson that says you really have to write about 1,000,000 words before you're any good, and I kind of believe that there's something to that. So I sent the manuscript, and like a week later, Kate emails back and says, "Michael loved your book. He wants to do it. Let's work out some of the details." So that was blew my mind. So we did it, and uh, he did the first book, and it went really well, and then he did the second book. It's very expensive, so trying to get funds together for the third book. Don't have that in place yet, but
Yeah.
that will come. But there's the best people. We got to go see them. They live in DC, and we got to go visit with them and go to their house. I got to see their recording studio, which is really cool. They have two really awesome booths side by side where all the magic happens. Um,
Yeah.
so that was great. They're just the sweetest people, and Michael is probably one of the most well-read people because he narrates all kinds of different stuff. Like he has been narrating a book for blind piano tuners, a magazine. It's a semi-annual publication that sounds like the strangest thing, but he narrates it, and they love it. And he does it, and he says, "I don't make much money, but I love it." And he knows a lot about music, even though he doesn't play instruments and those things. So my wife's family is very musical, so we had a big conversation about music, and that was great. But he's very well read, and they're a really sweet couple. So
Yeah, nice. It's something I love about sort of the book community. Anyone, involved in writing and that on sort of the ground levels, I don't know if it's the same in the big publishing houses and that. I think that's a different world. But in the small, the indie, even people that are getting majorly published, that are still just writers, there is a real community. There is a real sense of just wanting to see other people succeed and help out and do cool things. I think
mm,
that's one thing I love about writing and books and bookish people, that yeah, there's that support network, there's that, yeah, that keenness to help out and to enjoy other people's success.
yes, and it's been really cool. I actually learned that there was a lady who's about my age who lived about 2.25 miles from where I grew up, that she's an author. And I didn't know this until like 4 years ago. She writes Amish romance and does really well. She's published and she's prolific and does a lot of stuff. And she's just the sweetest person. So it's like, wow. they're in 2.5 miles away.
Yeah, that's incredible. So when you said you sort of bit the bullet in the COVID years, that's funny. A lot of people sort of emerged from that period, and just yeah, with the dead time. Unfortunately, I don't know. I was essential. My life really didn't change at all in the COVID years. There was just a few extra curriculum activities I did outside that were gone. So well, it was 5 to 2, not 9 to 5, because I
Hmm.
worked mornings. Just was rolled on, but for you, it seems to have been that prompt and that kick in the pants to get your stuff out there. But how, like before that, when did the writing bug bite, and what was the inspiration?
Um, I started writing. This sounds really weird, but in fourth grade, I would write little stories, and they were just for me. They weren't for anyone else. I wrote a story called "The Big Wind of Wallingford," and it was about a kid who moved to a new school, and he had gas, and he was trying to figure out where he could go to relieve himself. So he was going through the school, and he ends up in a dark room, and he lets his gas out and come to find out it's the teacher's lounge and they're just sitting in there in the dark and the quiet. And so that was the first thing that I wrote that anybody ever read. And so I did a lot of journaling, and I do some pastoral work. So I've written a lot of lessons and those kind of things. But I really have always come back to fantasy. When I was in high school, we had portfolios that we had to do for a grade, and I wanted to write a long story. So I wrote a 49-page story, double spaced on dot matrix paper. And the all the proctors hated it because they had to read the whole thing, and it wasn't very good. But it was just something that I thought, wow, I like this. I could do this, and I continued to write. I got involved in NaNoWriMo and participated in that every year, but it never I never really got the publishing bug until I never really thought that I would put it out and let other people read it until a few years back. But
Yeah.
yeah.
And was it just circumstance, the publishing bug, or
I
just
don't
yeah,
know. It just, I always, as a young person, as right out of high school and when I started college, I thought I would love to be a writer. There are aspects of it that I really enjoy. I enjoy the interpersonal aspects. I love to go and set up booths and at conventions and those things and just meet people. I love to talk to people. And I thought that, that's an aspect of it. And until I finished the first novel, I didn't understand really that I'm sort of working out my own bugs as I'm writing. I'm dealing with my own stuff and in a way that's not obvious to the average reader, but it's in retrospect, I look back and say, oh, okay, I can see what I was kind of going through there, and I know what that was about. So, and the COVID thing was kind of funny too. I also, as far as work goes, nothing changed. I still kept on the same schedule, but I felt a sense of urgency. I thought, if I'm going to do this, I need to do it now. Um, so it just another one of those kind of light bulb moments where I said, okay, I'm going to start this journey. If I can finish a book, then I'll publish it. So I set a goal, a number of words to write, and I made a chart and I stuck to it, and a book came out. It wasn't a good book, but it was a book, and probably the real thing that changed for me is I finally gave myself permission to write something bad, because I would write things and I would get most of the way through it and say, oh, this is awful. I'm just going to trash it. And I never finished. But then I kind of got some advice. Well, yeah, it's supposed to be bad.
yeah.
That's your first draft. So once I realized that, then it really, that part of it became a lot easier.
I think yeah, a lot of new writers bluff themselves. I don't know if that's the best word, but convince themselves that they're just going to sit down and just write their masterpiece, and the reality is not at all. And it does scare a lot of writers off that could probably, if they worked at it or persisted with it, would have something worth reading eventually. But you just got to
Right.
commit to the work and
Yeah.
doing the hard yards. And it's
Yeah.
yeah,
And you
it's a
got to be
labor of
okay
love.
with, yeah, you've got to get to the place where you're okay with someone who knows what they're talking about saying, this is really bad. You know, you need to fix some things. And to take that, that's difficult to do. Um, but I got a really harsh review early on from a friend of mine who was a writer in Hollywood in the 80s, and he wrote a really successful computer game, four iterations of it, and has done really well with that. And he read it and says, "Yeah, it's hot garbage." And I made 2.5 pages of notes of all just uh, really exculpatory, very difficult things to read, but he was right. You know, I wasn't going anywhere. I would lose as a thread. Characters that I would write, they would disappear. So it kind of helped me focus. And if it hadn't been from a friend, it would have been hard to
Yeah,
take that. But yeah,
yeah. It
tough
does
love.
help the little bit of sugar in the salt.
Hmm.
You know, when you're taking feedback, you want to be
Yes.
told the honest truth. It's bad, but
Hmm.
you want it to be told in a nice way. You don't just don't want to be hammered.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I read someone else's review on Amazon. It was a book I was looking at. I thought, I think I'd like this. There were some one-star reviews, so I always like to see, like, okay, what do people hate? I've gotten a one-star review because someone accidentally clicked the buy button on an audiobook. That was not my fault. But I read the review, and it was someone who was giving really on-point writing advice and was pointing out specifically things that didn't work in the story, but they'd read the whole story.
Yeah,
They knew what they were talking about, and they made really good points. And they said at the end, they said, all this is fixable. This isn't trashing you. This isn't saying you should give up. All these things you can do something about, but you need to go back and rewrite it. And I thought that's the most that that's the most caring review I've ever seen a stranger give another stranger. It wasn't inflammatory. They weren't just trying to put somebody down or look good themselves. They offered really useful advice. I'm like, I hope this person's a teacher
yeah.
because it was well done.
That's yeah, possibly a teacher, but possibly a writer that
Yeah, most
again
likely a writer,
in that space wants to build up other writers.
right?
And yeah, yeah, yeah. That's actually genuinely amazing to come something because we're in society can be so quick to criticize, and we seem to take pride
Yes.
in just ripping people down, which
Yep.
is a bizarre thing. But like I said, I haven't seen a lot of that in the writing space in the bookish
Right.
community. Although you talk about weird reviews, and I think I mentioned this in one of my other interviews, that Sarah Pascoe, British comedian who's written some very interesting books, got a one-star review because the person got a paper cut on it. Like turning the page, got a paper
Yeah.
cut. It's it's
Yeah.
got nothing to do with the book.
Should have used softer paper. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, people are definitely a little bit bizarre. So
It's yeah. It's
yeah,
interesting to read those reviews because you'll see one person, 5 stars, they loved it. They list things that they loved about it, and one person who hates it and will list the same things. And from that, you really have to say, okay, my book's not hitting the right people. I just went through and redid all my Amazon ads in this past 2 weeks, and that's what I was really trying to do. Is like I need to find the right people because there are people who are going to like my book. There are a
yeah.
lot of people who want to read it. I just have to find those people. So
And that's the thing, something new writers and that don't necessarily understand, or people that have had a few rejections, is they probably have got an audience. They just haven't got it to the right people. I was
yeah,
talking to a Isha Aisha Noon, um, brilliant writer, beautiful person over here in Australia, and yeah, she actually posted up one of her rejections from a major publisher, and you know, fortunately, she didn't give up. I think she said about 12 rejections, and then landed. And now doing incredible work, and she actually got an award the other day. So it's just that finding that ear, that finding that one person that'll take you and understand your work, and then that's if you're major or pursuing majors, or if you're indie, is just keep throwing it out there, trying to get to different people, because
Mm,
people, like you said, are gonna enjoy different things.
correct. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So you do many of the big cons and events over in America, or
No, I wanted to wait until I have three books out. I have a friend who lives about an hour and a half from here, Jay Willis. He's a great author and he's an attorney that's lives near me here. He's a little bit ahead of me in the journey. He's got a few more books out, and he started hitting some of those circuits. So I'm kind of following along in his steam, if you will. Um, but that's something that I would like to do. Um, it's hard with two books. It's a little hard with three books, but that's definitely where I want to head next because I like those things. I love going to Dragon Con um, and there are a bunch where I live in Kentucky. It's pretty central, so I can go 8 hours in any direction and get most of the cons in the U.S. So that's
yeah,
nice.
right. That's something I'm massively envious of.
Yeah.
There's a there's a book festival here that I go to every year, pretty much since I discovered it. But and it's got a mix of indie and traditional publish. But there's starting to get a few more fantasy there. But yeah, it's a lot of contemporary, a lot of yeah. But there's been a big shift. But to be able to sit there and I've seen friends post up some of the cons and some of the things that you guys do in America. It's like next level. Typical America, everything is bigger and better. I don't know if everything's better, but it's certainly bigger.
Yeah, it's bigger. And I've listened to some of your other interviews, and I think that was something you'd mentioned before is that the fantasy really hasn't gotten a lot of traction where you are, um, and that's interesting to me. Um, because you have a mindset of where you are, then you go somewhere else and you're like, wow, things are different, and you're
Yeah.
surprised by that. So yeah, well, maybe there'll be a wellspring of good fantasy authors come up in your area and
Well, there's
spread around.
brilliant ones here. We've traditionally had
Yeah.
some fantastic fantasy writers. Jay Kristoff, Trudy Canavan, Ian Irvine, Bevan Madsen, I believe she's Australian, but they all
Oh,
go overseas to get published,
yeah,
and then we bring it back. It's like our
yeah,
publishers, you know, don't understand it. So we're doing indies are doing all right, but they don't have a big. I've got some indie friends doing all right in the fantasy space, but they don't have a big place where they can really throw them out where you get a lot of indies coming together and a lot of so it is a lot tougher.
yeah.
But that's just the challenge of what we do over here. But yeah, we've got some fantastic ride. Back in the day, we used to do our own, and
Mm,
then I don't know if you know Fiona McIntosh um, began writing fantasy back in the early 90s, possibly 80s. I think early 90s when Australia were doing it, and then now she's evolved into historical fiction and then
okay.
crime, and she's an Australian darling, British born, and but yeah, and a godmother to a lot of Australian writers. I did her masterclass, and she talks about it. There was this lady that basically owned the space in Australia, and then she
Mm,
passed, and just no one took up the mantle. She had all the knowledge, everything in her head, and just no one had it once she was gone. And
mm.
that's sort of where the Australian industry there's it's starting to come back a little bit, but that's another challenge. That's not why we're here. We're here to talk about your amazing.
It is interesting, and I always I like to ask people about, what do people in the area where you live, what do they read? And it's I'm in a rural area, and Appalachian is the region, and of course the historical historical fiction is big here. Kind of the Amish romance, I'd mentioned that. Romance is big everywhere. I think if you look at
Yeah,
the top 10 genres, it's like seven of the top 10 is some kind of romance. But
yeah,
um, it's some of the stuff that I really like to read. Um, isn't around much here anymore. But when I was a kid, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons in like 1989 or something like that. The novels were everywhere. I could find them really easily. But now, I've got to drive an hour or so just to find a bookstore that carries anything like that.
yeah.
So,
I feel that pain. That's what it's like over here. And yeah, like you say, romance is the big one. But I do read around. Like I love my fantasy. That's still my go-to. But I think as a writer, you know, to read a bit of everything is really good. It changes your ideas. It opens up new thoughts, and it helps you grow as a writer. So I read just about everything and listen to
yes.
even more. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, audiobooks are great, and I have about an hour commute to work, so I can just take a chance and say, "Hey, Hoopla or whatever." I think the Hoopla is the big one that I use. Like, pick me something, and I'll just listen to it, and
yeah,
um, can find some diamonds in the rough that way.
yeah. That's pretty much. I used to drive for a living before I got my current job. So
Hmm.
basically 8 hours in a van all day, just churning through audiobooks. So I would listen to
Yeah,
everything. And it's a good way to connect, I think, with books I read, you know, 10, 15 years ago, because I don't get a lot of reading time. So to reread a book is very difficult, because I want to read new stuff.
right.
But to listen to something, which is what I've been doing with the Discworld and doing my book reviews and stuff. And yeah, just yeah, it's a great way to reconnect with old books and discover something, like Me Before You, something I probably wouldn't sit down and read. I actually really enjoyed that book, listening to it. The romance was a pure
Hmm.
romance that they made a movie of, which I don't
Right,
mind romance. I know that,
right,
I don't like the Mills and Boone swooning bosom romance, but a clever
right.
romance I can name.
Yeah,
But
I've
yeah,
toyed with the idea of a romance. I have a kind of an interesting story that I've wanted to write, but I want to make sure that I get the voice right.
yeah,
Um, writing a female voice can be difficult to
yeah,
do it well, so I want to practice a lot. So before I set something out on paper to put out for everybody to read, but
yeah.
uh,
I know because I've written some epic fantasy and I've written a little bit of contemporary over here. And yeah, my second contemporary had a female lead. And actually it is difficult, but I have three sisters and so a
yeah,
lot of female friends. So I didn't overthink it, and doing readings of my work with we have a local writers group, which I struggle to get to meetings, but when I do go, we do readings and stuff. And apparently, like a couple of the ladies there said I do female characters really well, which is always encouraging.
well,
So
good,
that would be my advice: just don't overthink it, just and
yeah,
just yeah, you know, don't get bogged down.
that's
I know
good
certain people
advice.
think you can't write about like men shouldn't write about women and things like that. Of course you
I think
can,
that's silly. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like to write about things that I don't understand because it forces me to go and do my due diligence.
yeah.
Um, make sure that I understand it. So, yeah,
And I think
rather
that's
than
really inspiring as another writer to, to hear that you're challenging yourself in your writing. Yes, you want to delve into things we know, and that's part of why we write is to understand our own lives and then alter it and control the narrative, but also to understand other people's lives too.
and I think you're right on about not overthinking it. I think we fill ourselves with things that are diverse, that are interesting, and that are challenging. But then when we sit down to write, we just write from, what's in us. And, we spend our time feeding ourselves, and then from that we put it out, and that's what you get when you read it.
Yeah.
The culmination of all that.
So we're sort of wrapping up quickly heading to end of time. Is there anything else you want to add before we say goodbye about your books, where we can find you, what's next?
I have a website, authorjackadkins.com. I have all my physical books available there that I do autographs and personalized writings and things. And I try and sweeten the deal a little. The price is the same as on Amazon, but I try and add some extras. So you can go there. Everything's on Amazon. Everything is on Audible. The fourth book is well underway. This is the easiest book that I've started so far. It's writing itself, and it's the first book that I have had the title before I wrote the first word, and I can't share the title because it's a little spoilery, but
Okay,
it just instantly had the title and a very clear direction of where to go, um, and it does exactly what I want it to do. It's a nice divider between the two trilogies. So
yeah,
that's well underway, and um, I have if you like thriller, guys with guns type of that kind of stuff. I have a series on Royal Road called The Devil on Clack Mountain, and it's a kind of an Appalachian story, so it's very rural, but it's also has some of those cool elements of gear. The gearheads will like it because it's very detailed about the cars and the weapons and the gadgets and all that stuff. So.
right.
I think authors get a little skittish about writing in other genres sometimes, and I can kind of feel that, but I thought this was a safe way to go. So Royal Road's pretty safe.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Jack. The Dragons of Dawn, definitely worth checking out. As he said, they're on Amazon, they're everywhere. Thank you for joining me, Jack, and having this incredible chat.
Thank you very much for having me. This is great, and I've enjoyed. I'm working my way through your channel, so I've enjoyed your other interviews and your reviews and things. So thank you very much.
And yeah, thank you everyone for watching. Happy reading and subscribe and follow for more.